This week on the show, we clear up the myth about scrub of death, finally, hopefully, look at Wayland and Weston on FreeBSD, check out Intel QuickAssist because it's here we hear, and we also look at OpenSMTP on OpenBSD. So we have a whole tutorial for you prepared, something for everyone on BSD. Now, BSD Now, episode 204, WWF, Wayland, Weston, and FreeBSD, recorded on the 26th of July 2017. Hi, I'm your host, Benedikt Reuschling.
And I'm Alan Jude.
A new week, a new episode for you, starting with great headlines this week, because we have Matt Ahrens answering questions about the scrub of death. So what's this about, Alan?
Yeah, as promised last week, we would bring you some extra content about this. So in working on that breakdown I did last week, I got contacted by Matt Ahrens and actually a few other people from the ZFS project helping me cover some of the points. And Matt forwarded me some answers he had given to some of these questions previously so that we could quote him verbatim. So, hopefully these answers in the exact words of, the primary author of ZFS at this point will help settle this once and for all.
Yeah, by all means. Okay, so for people to remember,
so these are in question answer form because they were questions that were asked and then Matt's answers. So yes, Benedikt, give us the lead off question.
Yeah. So the first question was, ZFS has an operation called scrub that is used to check all data in the pool and recover any data that is incorrect. However, if a bug which make errors on the pool persist, like for example a system with bad non-ECC RAM, then scrub can cause damage to a pool instead of recover it. I heard it called the scrub of death somewhere. Therefore, as far as I understand, using scrub without ECC memory is dangerous.
Right.
And here's his answer.
And so Matt Ahrens' response to this is, I don't believe this is accurate. What is the proposed mechanism by which scrub can corrupt a lot of data with non-ECC memory? And he goes on to explain, ZFS repairs bad data by writing known good data to the bad location on disk. The checksum of the data has to verify correctly for it to be considered good. An undetected memory error could change the in-memory checksum or the data, causing ZFS to incorrectly think that the data on disk didn't match the checksum when it actually did. In that case, ZFS will attempt to repair the data by first rereading the same offset on disk and then reading from any other available copies of the data. So if there's a checksum error, the first thing it does is try reading that same block off the disk. If that's still wrong, then it tries going for the redundancy. Whether that's mirrors, ditto blocks is what it's called when you have copies equals 2 and so on. Even if you don't ever use copies equals 2, certain data, like important metadata, is already written as 2 or 3 copies anyway. So there are ditto blocks even if you're not using copies equals 2. Or, RAID Z. If any of these attempts result in data that matches the checksum, then that data will be written on top of the supposedly bad data. If that data was actually good, but was just tricked into looking corrupt because of the ECC error, or the memory error, then overwriting it with the same good data isn't going to hurt anything. Mm-hmm. So let's look at what happens in the 3 different types of errors you can get from non-ECC memory. Number 1, the most rare, is just random errors. Particles, strikes on the RAM or whatever, say less than 1 error per gigabyte per second. If ZFS finds data that matches the checksum, then we know that we have the correct data, at least at that point in time, with the probability of 1 minus 1 over 2 to the power of 256, because that's the strength of our checksum. If there are a lot of memory errors happening at a high rate, or if the in-memory checksum was corrupt, then ZFS won't be able to find a good copy of the data, so it won't do any repair writes. Right? So if we detect the checksum is wrong, and we try to read the backup copy, and it's also wrong, then ZFS is just going to return a read error and not do anything. And then next time you read it, maybe you don't hit the memory error and it'll be fine, and everything will be fine. So it won't do a repair write. It's possible that the correctly checksum data is later corrupted in memory before the repair write. However, the window of vulnerability is very, very small, on the order of milliseconds, between when the checksum is verified and when the write to disk completes. It's implausible that this tiny window of memory vulnerability would be hit repeatedly. Memory that much, or the second type of error you can get is memory that much, or pretty much never does the right thing. Has a huge rate of particle strikes, or all memory always reads 0 or something like that. In this case, critical parts of kernel memory, like the instructions you're trying to execute, will be immediately corrupted, causing the system to panic long before ZFS can do anything. So, no data lost there. And 3, one or a few memory locations that have stuck bits that always read 0 or 1 no matter what you do to them. This is the scenario discussed in the message which Matt believes originally started the scrub of death myth, with links to a post on the FreeNAS forums. This assumes that we read in some data from disk to a memory location with a stuck bit, correct that same bad memory location by overwriting the memory with the correct data, and then we write the bad memory location to disk. However, ZFS doesn't do that. It seems the author thinks that ZFS uses parity, which it does only in the RAID Z case. Even with RAID Z, we also verify the checksum and we don't overwrite the bad memory location. So, we've read a block off disk and then determined that it was bad. What happens is ZFS reads from a good place on disk somewhere into a different spot in memory. If that checksum is right, it writes that data over the bad spot on disk. It never overwrites the bad spot in memory. So the scrub of death isn't going to happen the way that the forum post suggested it might. So Matt goes on, here's what ZFS will actually do in this scenario. If ZFS reads data from disk into memory location with a stuck bit, it will detect a checksum mismatch and try to find a good copy of the data to repair the bad disk. ZFS will allocate new, different memory location to read a second copy of the data from, say, the other side of a mirror or whatever. And this happens near the end of the function DSL scan scrub CB. If the new memory location also has a stuck bit, then its checksum will also fail, and we won't repair the bad disk at all. If the checksum of the second copy of the data is correct, then we will write that copy from the good memory to the bad spot on disk. This write is unnecessary because the bad disk is not really bad, but it's overwriting the good data with the exact same data, so no harm done. I believe that this misunderstanding stems from the idea that ZFS fixes bad data by overwriting it in place with good data. In reality, ZFS overwrites the location on disk using different memory locations from each read from disk. The scrub of death myth assumes that ZFS overwrites the location in memory, which it does not. Right. So if it's read off disk, found the bad checksum, that triggers another function to happen where it reads from a different location into a different spot in memory, possibly corrects it on disk, and returns the right data to the user. And then this function continues, and eventually that bad block of memory will be freed. So that memory cannot be reused during the recovery process because it's still full of the bad data and is not freed until after. And we're going to use a different memory location, and it's most likely going to be a different one every time. So the idea that the scrub of death is somehow going to, there's one bad spot in memory and ZFS is going to cycle your entire disk's worth of data through it and scribble all over your pool is a little outlandish.
Okay. Yeah, so the summary basically goes that no one should worry the scrub of death, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Is it true that ZFS verifies the checksum of every block on every read from disk?
Yes. So this is part of a series of questions that get to a point. So,
And if that block is incorrect, that ZFS will repair it?
Yes. So if you read data from disk and the checksum's not correct, ZFS will start looking for another copy, whether that's the ditto block, the other side of a mirror, a RAID Z, whatever. And if it can, it will find a good copy of the data, double checking the checksum, making sure it's that the second copy is actually right as well. If it is, it'll overwrite the bad data on disk with the good one so that you'll be able to reuse it, or you won't run into the error a second time. And it makes sure that the user always gets back either the right data or an error, never the wrong data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if yes, is it possible that set options or flags to change that behavior? For example, I would like for ZFS to verify checksums during any read, but not change anything and only report about issues if it appears. Is it possible?
So Matt says, there isn't any built-in flag for doing that, but it wouldn't be very hard to add one. I don't know why you would want to return read errors instead of correcting it, though. In particular, a study was done and found that when the operating system actually does return an error, a lot of applications don't necessarily do the right thing. And so you might actually be more likely to crash or cause problems by doing that rather than letting ZFS correct it. Then a note I have here is just if you wanted to verify data without attempting to correct it, you could, it depends what you're after. Like if you have two sides of a mirror and you want to just find the spots where it's bad on the other one but not fix it, it depends what you mean by not fix it. So if you import the pool read-only and read the files or do a scrub, it's going to read the blocks but not be able to write the repair to it. And you'll just see the count if you do zpool status. But if you just want to get a read error, then you'd have to disconnect the parity or something, offline it. It doesn't make sense anyway. The reason why this feature doesn't exist is because why would you want the broken data?
Okay. Now, if using a mirror, when a file is read, is it fully read and verified from both sides of the mirror?
You mean read, but English is annoying, isn't it? Yeah, so the question is, if you're reading from a mirror, does ZFS read both sides of the mirror all the time? And the answer is no. For performance purposes, each block is read from only one side of the mirror, unless its checksum fails. If you read a block and the checksum fails, we go to the other side of the mirror to check it. This, in particular, is one of the reasons why scrub exists. Because scrub is going to go and read both sides of all the mirrors and make sure they're both right so that you can correct data errors, before they get worse. Whereas, that's one of the problems with hardware RAID and mirrors, is there's no way to guarantee you can check both sides of the mirrors and make sure that they're actually right. Whereas with ZFS, because you have the checksum, you can tell if it's right. So, if you compare the two halves of a mirror on regular hardware RAID and you find that there's a difference, how do you know which one's right? You don't. With ZFS, at least you have the checksum, you can tell which one's right, and then sync the other one to be correct.
And the last question is, what is the difference between a scrub and copying every file to def null? Right.
So if you just copy every file, or basically read every file on the disk, that's almost the same as a scrub, right? You've read all the data and made sure that it's all good. What that doesn't do is it doesn't check all copies of the files, right? It doesn't check the other side of a mirror. It doesn't check the RAID Z, every single block, every parity, and so on. It just makes sure that the default copy is good. So a scrub reads everything on the entire disk and makes sure it's correct, whereas reading every file might not touch everything. Also, if you read every file, you're not checking snapshots, copies of files that aren't part of the current file system. Whereas a scrub does.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay, that little back and forth hopefully answered some of people's questions, or the myths about it were now vaporized and never will return.
If only it was that easy to kill these kind of rumors.
But it's good. I mean, the developers of ZFS are open about these questions and basically tell you how it is. And for those people who can't still believe it, they should look at the code.
Well,
it's all
in particular,
there.
In this case, it's instead of just saying, no, that's silly, they actually explained how ZFS doesn't work the way it would have to work in order for that to happen like that. Also, there was a study, I don't have the PDF handy, where they actually built a system where they purposely I think it was in a VM, but they purposely injected errors into memory trying to break ZFS and found that they could crash the system at points, but they couldn't actually make ZFS do the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's relatively easy to do on a virtual machine because you control the whole memory thing. Well, that's a good test case, but ZFS is robust and will never...
Yes, your disks and the rest of your computer are plotting against you and trying to destroy your data, and ZFS is the last line of defense.
And a good one.
Okay.
Story. Yep. So the next story is called Wayland, Weston, and FreeBSD. Oh my. So KDE's CI system for FreeBSD, that is what upstream runs to continuously test KDE Git code on the FreeBSD platform, is missing some bits and falling some tests because of Wayland. Or rather, because FreeBSD now has Wayland, but not Qt5 Wayland, and no Weston either, which is the reference implementation of a Wayland compositor. So today, in that blog post, the author went hunting for the bits and pieces needed to make that happen. Fortunately, all the heavy lifting was already been done. There's a Weston port prepared, and there was a Qt5 Wayland port well hidden in the Area 51 Plasma branch. So he has taken the liberty of pulling them into the Area 51 repository as branch Qt Wayland. That way, he can punch or nudge Weston forward and or push Qt5 Wayland in separately. Nicest from a testing perspective is probably doing both at the same time. So he continued to pick a random Hello World Wayland tutorial and also build a minimal Qt program using message box -- question or : question and his favorite function to hate right now because it's an internationalization characteristics. Anyway, then setting the xdg _runtime _dir to temp xdg, he could start Weston as an X11 client and Wayland Hello as a Wayland client displaying in Weston, and Qt Hello as either an X11 client or as a Wayland client. So in conclusion, this gives users of Area 51, while shuffling branches, granted, a modern desktop and modern display capability. Oh, bye. It will take a few days for this to trickle up and or down so that the continuous integration can benefit and we can all make sure the KWin's tests all work on FreeBSD. But it's not a good step towards tight continuous integration and another small step towards KDE Plasma 5 on a desktop on FreeBSD.
Nice.
Oh, that's good news.
It'd be really nice to have KDE 5 working well on FreeBSD. But also just, having Wayland and Weston and so on, since that seems to be where a lot of things are heading on the desktop now.
Yeah, and it gives more people the chance to try it out and do some application development, even if it's just a Hello World program on it. Yeah, good stuff happening. Check out the Area 51 and, try it out for yourself.
This week's episode of BSD Now is brought to you by IX Systems. Head over to ixsystems.com and check out their ultimate guide to buying a new server for open source. But really, what you need to do is get in touch with them and tell them what you need, what problem you're trying to solve or what the point of the server is. And by explaining that and the minimum level of performance you need, they'll be able to help you design and build the right machine for the job. With the huge range of Intel processors you can get now, it's very easy to get confused and not know which one you want.
Yeah, which socket and which, all
more
these
cores
the
at
details.
lower frequency or fewer cores at higher frequency, or, do you have to spend a bunch of money and get a large number of cores at a high frequency?
Yeah, it's complicated, but IX Systems is here to help, and they know exactly what works together and gives you the proper performance for your use case.
Yes, they can really integrate everything together for you and make sure that you get stuff that's actually going to work with your open source operating system of choice. And they have great warranty service. on top of, they build your server quickly, but they also run it through a burn-in test and make sure that, the hard drives and the RAM and all the things that might fail, usually if they're going to fail right away, they work out all those kinks before they ship the server to you. So, as soon as you get it, you can rack it and get to work and not have to worry about something breaking. And if something does happen, their warranty service is there, advanced replacements, get your machine back up and running as fast as possible.
Yeah, so check out ixsystems.com and what they have to offer.
Yeah, it's who I use for everything, so you should do the same. So next, we have a post from our friend Savan, who's got a report from Package Source Con 2017. He says, this year's Package Source Con returned to London once again. It was last held in London back in 2014. The 2014 con was the first package source that Savan had attended, and he was working on the Darwin and PowerPC fixes for some months and presented on the progress he had made with a 12-inch G4 PowerBook. He said, I took away a G4 Mac Mini that day to help spare the PowerBook for use and dedicate a machine for builds and testing. The offer of PowerPC hardware donation was repeated at this year's con, thanks to Jay Perkin, who showed up with a backpack full of Mac Minis. More on that story later. Since 2014, they've held conferences in Berlin and Krakow. In Krakow, we had talks with a range of projects over 2 days, including Haiku ports to Common Lisp, to MIDI-PIX, which is building native PE binaries for Windows. And back to the BSDs. I was very pleased to continue the theme of a diverse program this year. Aside from the package source and NetBSD stuff, we had talks from FreeBSD, OpenBSD, Slackware Linux, and Plan 9. Things began with a pub gathering on the Friday with a pre-con social event. We hung out and chatted till almost midnight on a wide range of topics, such as supporting a system running NFS on MS-DOS. What? The origins of PDKSH, corporate IT, culture, and many other topics. On parting, I was asked about the starting time on Saturday, as there was some conflicting information. I learned that the registration email had stated a later start time and that I had scheduled for and advertised on the website by about 30 minutes. Lesson learned, register for your own event. Not a problem. I still needed to set up a web page for the live video stream anyway. I could do both when I got back. With some trimming here and there, I made a new schedule and posted that on the Package Source Con website and moved on to trying to set up a basic web page that contained a snippet of JavaScript to play a live video stream from Scale Engine. Oh. It's normally not that hard. You just splat it in and it works. But 2 hours later, I was pointed out that the cross-site scripting protection headers from packagesource.org break that functionality. Thanks to Jay McNeil for debugging and providing a working page for it. So then on Saturday, started off with Giovanni Vacchis speaking about Pledge in OpenBSD and adding support to various packages in the ports tree. ALNSN then spoke about installing packages from a repo hosted on a Tor network. After a quick coffee break, we were back to hear Charles Forsyth speak about Plan 9 and Inferno in dealing with portability, building software, and the problems which are avoided by the environment there. There was followed by a very energetic rant by David Spencer about the Slack Builds project on packaging third-party software. Slack Builds is a packaging system for Slackware Linux that was inspired by FreeBSD ports. Oh. For the first slot after lunch, AGC gave a talk on the early history of package source, followed by Thomas Merkel, who was using Vagrant to test package source changes with ease, locally using Vagrant. Then Coburn covered his work on adding security to package source, and B. Siegert covered the benefits of performing our own bulk builds in the cloud and the challenges they faced trying to do that. Savan's talk was about some topics and ideas that inspired him and caught his attention, and how it could maybe apply to his work. The title of the talk was taken from the name of Andrew Weatherall's St. Etnu remix, possibly referring to two different styles of track, both dub and vocal, merged into one or something else. I meant it in terms of applications of connecting, the application of connecting thoughts and ideas. After that, AGC gave a second talk on the evolution of the Netflix OpenConnect appliance, which runs FreeBSD. And then Vladislav Stokov wrapped up the day with talking about the technical implementation details of the successor to package tools on FreeBSD called Package, and how it could benefit, or could it be a benefit for package source. Then on day 2, they moved on to a hack day at the London Hackspace. Solana burnt some CDs of the most recent Mac PowerPC builds for NetBSD 8.0 beta and dash current, and installed them on the Mac Minis that he had gotten there. He also set up a donated G4 Mini for everyone in the, a dual boot configuration, and moved on to taking apart his MacBook Air to inspect the Wi-Fi adapter, as he wanted to replace it with something that would work with FreeBSD. It was not clear from iFixit teardown photos the card's size. It seems like a normal mini PCIe card, but it turned out to be far smaller. Thomas had also had the same card in his, so they were not alone. So they started putting together a driver for the Broadcom card. The project is still in the very early days and lacks support for encrypted networks, but hopefully it'll appear on the reviews.freebsd.org site in the future.
Oh, yes. That would be nice.
Vaidai worked on fixing SunOS bugs in various packages, and later in the night we set up a NetBSD/Mac PowerPC bulk build environment on the Mac Mini. And then Thomas set up OpenGrok instance to index the source code of all the software available in packages in package source. This helps make the evaluation of changes easier and the scope of impact a little quicker without having to run through a potential lengthy bulk build change in mind to realize the impact. I remember this topic coming up for FreeBSD. We talked about just doing like a make fetch extract in the ports tree and being able to grep over all of it to see, you know, how many programs use this libc function or whatever. Doing it with OpenGrok is a very interesting approach. I have to mention that to Brooks. And then they also cleared out some ticket and email backlog on the package source, and some work on the EdgeRouter Lite. And then on Monday, they reconvened at the Hackspace again and worked some more. He started pulling together the talks page with the details from Saturday and the slides which he had received in preparation for the videos, which would come later in the week. By 3 p.m., Package Source Con was over, and he was pretty exhausted, as you might imagine, organizing a 3-day event like that. But very pleased with how it had gone and how much fun they had had. Many thanks to the NetBSD Foundation for purchasing a camera to use for the streaming, and a speedy response all around by the board, the open source specialist group at the BCS, and the Chartered Institute for IT and the London Hackspace for hosting us, Scale Engine for providing the streaming facilities, and then Vaidai for hosting the recorded videos, Alan Jude for pointers on the streaming stuff, Jared McNeil for debugging, Nicebug and Patrick McAvoy for tips on streaming, because Patrick McAvoy had organized the streaming for BSDCan as well, and the attendees and speakers. This year we had speakers from the US, Italy, Germany, and London. They're now looking forward to Package Source Con 2018, and they have a link here where you can find all the videos of the talks. There's a couple I'd like to see out of that too.
Yeah, this is great stuff. I mean, the hardware side and the whole, you know, where package source is used, and the similar problems they have with, you know, the packaging system and the bugs and all that. That's a pretty good rundown of the whole activity in the package source space. Yeah, so check out the links, and yeah, maybe show up at the next Package Source Con. So it's time for our news roundup this week, starting with QuickAssist driver for FreeBSD is here, and the pfSense support coming. So this is Intel's technology about the QuickAssist driver.
Yeah, so it's a PCI Express card that let you offload certain types of crypto and that type of stuff too.
Right. I remember the presentation at BSD Can.
Right. So it can do some types of crypto, I think some types of compression, and a couple other things.
Mm-hmm.
So the article says, this week we have something that Serve the Home readers will be excited about. Before I started writing for Serve the Home, I was a reader and has been longing for QuickAssist support ever since the first Rangeley article over 3.5 years ago. It was clear from the get-go that Rangeley was going to be the preeminent firewall appliance platform of the day. The scope of products that were impacted by the Intel Atom C2000 series of bugs where the timer chip or something burned out and caused the machines to have problems. From my personal firewalls, I use pfSense on the Rangeley platform, so I've been awaiting the use of QuickAssist with my hardware for almost the entire product generation. New hardware and QuickAssist incoming for pfSense finally. So pfSense and a few other firewalls are based on FreeBSD. FreeBSD tends to be a little bit behind Linux on driver support sometimes, although not usually for Intel hardware, but is popular for embedded security appliances. While Serve the Home is the only site to have done QuickAssist benchmarks for OpenSSL and IPsec VPNs pre-Skylake, we expect more performance or more platforms to use it now that the new Intel Xeon Scalable processor family is out. With the Xeon Scalable platforms, the Lewisburg PCH chip has QuickAssist options that can go up to 100 gigabits per second, or 2.5 times faster than the previous generation add-in cards that only go up to 40 gigabits. We now have more and better hardware for QAT, but we're still devoid of a viable FreeBSD QAT driver from Intel. That has finally changed. Our Intel Xeon Scalable processor family, which is the Skylake SP, launch Coverage Central, has been the focus of the Serve the Home's attention this week. There was another important update from Intel that got buried, a publicly available QuickAssist driver for FreeBSD. You can find the driver over on 01.org, and it's it's dated July 12th, 2017, so very new. Drivers are great, but we also need support to be enabled in the OS and the application layer. Patrick forwarded me a tweet from Jim Thompson, who's the lead at Netgate, the company behind pfSense. Netgate has been a key company pushing for QuickAssist from Intel into FreeBSD and also for appliances in the market. To see that QAT is coming to FreeBSD and that they're working on integrating into pfSense is very welcome news.
Yep, indeed. So,
for Serve the Home readers, get ready. It appears to be actually and finally happening. QuickAssist on FreeBSD and pfSense.
Oh, that's good news. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's more stuff happening on the Intel front from the Foundation side, but I cannot get into it right now because I need to have more stuff prepared, and there's still some stuff in the in the loop. But there's stuff happening. I can assure people that this is something productive and moving stuff forward.
Yeah. I'm going to have to call IX and see if I can get some of this hardware now.
Yeah, why not? Okay, that's good news. And we have our next story about OpenBSD on the Huawei MateBook X from Joshua Stein, or Steen, if you want to pronounce it that way. Stein is German for stone. Little knowledge on the side. The story goes that the Huawei MateBook X is a high-quality 13-inch ultra-thin notebook with a fanless Core i5 processor. It is obviously biting the design of the Apple 12-inch MacBook, but it does have some notable improvements, such as a slightly larger screen, a more usable keyboard with adequate key travel, and 2 USB-C ports. It is also using standard PC components than the MacBook, such as the PS2 connected keyboard, removable M2 Wi-Fi card, etc. So its OpenBSD compatibility is quite good. In the contrast to the Xiaomi Mi Air, the MateBook is actually sold in the United States and comes with a full warranty and much higher build quality, though at twice the price. It is offered in the United States as a space gray color for the Core i5 model and at a gold color for the Core i7. And the fanless Core i5 processor feels snappy and doesn't get warm during normal usage on OpenBSD. During a Make-J4 build, so 4 processes in parallel, building, At full CPU speed does cause the laptop to get warm, though the palm rest remains a usable temperature, not burning yourself. And the chassis is all aluminum and has excellent rigidity in the keyboard area. The 13-inch 2160 by 1440 glossy IPS Gorilla Glass screen has a very small bezel, and its hinge is properly weighted to allow opening the lid with one hand. There is no wobble in the screen when open, even when jostling the desk that the laptop sits on. Wow, this is a thorough test here. It has a reported brightness of 350 nits. He did not experience any of the UEFI boot variable problems that he did mention in the Xiaomi, and the MateBook booted quickly into OpenBSD after reinitializing the GPT table during installation. And there's a couple of pictures on the blog post for people who want to see how the screen looks like and a little bit of the keyboard. And the blog post goes a little bit more into details about firmware and OpenBSD support for various components. So people might want to check that out if they are in the market for a new notebook. Speaking of new stuff, people might want to run a cool new server hardware on the DigitalOcean cloud, which is our sponsor this week. So DigitalOcean, go to digitalocean.com and see what they have in stock for you, because they can offer you
specifically not server hardware. You don't want to have to deal with server hardware. You can just rent virtual instances in the cloud, and they're very quick.
Oh yes,
you just go to the website, you click I want this one, click, within a minute it's up and running, and you log into it and start FreeBSDing.
Yeah, or you want to run a specific application. Yeah, like you want to set up your GitLab server or your Node.js or your own cloud instance. Then the DigitalOcean folks have prepared that for you. You can just select it, click on it, and the droplet will start that instance with the application preset, pre-configured, so you can use it right away. So if you want to run a WordPress blog or whatever you want to do in your little virtual droplet out there, DigitalOcean has most of the popular products available already for you.
Yep. Moving on, we now have OpenSMTP under OpenBSD using SSL, the virtual users setup, and Dovecot for IMAP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is for the people who want to make sure that their mail is not only delivered, but also mail is filtered and everything is encrypted, of course. So that's what people...
Well, I think filtering is the next tutorial. This one doesn't.
That's the follow-up. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, so, one step at a time.
Back in 2013 at AsiaBSDCon, a team of OpenBSD committers presented a mail solution named OpenSMTP. Developed by the OpenBSD team, we find that it's much appreciated philosophy as developers: security, simplicity, clarity, and advanced features. The basic configuration is pretty simple. If you're using OpenBSD, OpenSMTP is already installed by default. We can immediately start with a simple configuration. You just decide what interfaces you want to listen on, specify a path to the aliases file so we can manage any redirections. And that's about it. Mails will be delivered to the domain, to the local mbox file in each user's home directory. And then finally, we accept to relay local mails exclusively. So after walking through its features, you can see here, we just edit the config, specify which interfaces we want to listen on, specify where the aliases file lives, and say accept from any for domain cagedmonster.net, with aliases pointing to that aliases file, and deliver it to the mbox. And we accept for local alias, same aliases file, and deliver it to the mbox.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the syntax is very similar because it's based on the PF syntax, and people who are familiar with that find themselves right at home in this config file.
Yep. And then we allow accept from local for any relay to allow mail submitted locally to be relayed out to anywhere on the internet. So once you've done that, you now have a mail server. So just rcctl, enable SMTPDD, and then start it, and you're up and running. Now they want to make it slightly more advanced and add TLS. So they need either a self-signed certificate, which will not be trusted, or a free certificate from Let's Encrypt. So they walk through how to do that. Install it and configure it in SMTPD. You just have to add a PKI line, the host name and the certificate and the key for it. And then in your listen line, you add TLS and then tell it which certificate to use. And everything else is the same.
Yeah, so this is very thorough, and people can compare the config files and follow it basically from the start and have the same setup once they're done at the bottom of the blog post.
Right. Now, if you want to deliver to or have more mailboxes than you have local users, right? If you don't want every person that has a mailbox to necessarily have an account, you can use the virtual users feature. So after we install and enable Dovecot, we create a new user called virtual users, or virtmail. Create them a directory and chown it. Then we add the password table and install the OpenSMTP extras, which gives you a couple extra things. And then we can see, in addition to our aliases file, we also add a table password and a table virtuals. That'll do the mapping for us there. And then lastly, instead of delivering to the local mbox, we deliver to the LMTP, the local mail transfer protocol socket, for Dovecot. And Dovecot will take care of delivering the mail. So now if we look in the config for Dovecot, we can now see that it will accept the mail on the local mail transfer protocol and deliver it to the virtual user's home directory under var virtmail domain username, and allow the users to pick up that mail via IMAP using the passwords in this separate mail password file. So
that's very nice.
A couple of quick little changes there, and now you have virtual users, and you can host multiple domains. And importantly, you can have the mailbox, Alan at domain1.com and Alan at domain2.com be separate mailboxes if you want.
Yeah, that's a nice way of keeping things separate.
Mm-hmm. So why don't you tell us about this second tutorial from the same site?
Yeah, so this is basically putting it on top, adding more stuff, the same setup. It's just an addition to the current one, and it allows people to support MySQL. So it has MySQL support basically, and SpamD. And SpamD is basically your protection against the evil people that just spam your inbox. And so what you do is basically we jump right in and we use our domains, aliases, virtual users with a MySQL database or MariaDB under OpenBSD. We deploy SpamD with OpenSMTPD for a strong anti-spam solution. So we first set up the MySQL support for OpenSMTPD in Dovecot. Then this is a regular create our SQL database name, SMTPD, very creative. And we create our SQL user, OpenSMTPD, and give him the privileges on the database, and we set its password, of course. Then we create a structure for the SQL database, so the whole table layout and what other things that are needed. So there's a couple of create table statements here that are being created once you start that script. And then we generate our password with Blowfish. Remember, it's OpenBSD. For our users, and we create the tables and we include the data. So that's the whole database chugging along, loading that data. Then we push everything to our database, so that is being more loaded even more. And then it's time to configure OpenSMTPD itself to know about these two new additions. So there's a MySQL conf file and configuration done for it. So that's the usual SQL server setup that you would do. And then there's a little configuration section on dovecot.conf, the auth.sql.conf extension, and dovecot-sql conf extension so that they know about the MySQL database that you have set up. Then it's the whole services restart, of course, and then OpenSMTP and SPAMD setup. For those people who don't know SPAMD, SPAMD is a service simulating a fake SMTP server and relaying a strict compliance with RFC to determine whether the sender or the server delivering a mail is a spammer or not. And that way you can catch a lot of people trying to send you crap. The configuration of SPAMD is actually quite easy. You enable SPAMD and spamlogd at system startup, and then set up a couple of configuration flags in the SPAMD config. And the package filter, or not package filter, packet filter configuration has also been done here. Everything is detailed on the blog, of course. You can follow that along. And a little bit of configuration for SPAMD itself is also done at the bottom. So that's a whole setup for filtering and figuring out how strong you want to have thresholds and things like that. And after that, you start the SPAMD and spamlogd, and then it all works together with your setup that you already have with SMTPD on OpenBSD. Yeah, that's a good setup. It doesn't stop in the middle like many of those other setups do. It gives you a whole big amount of tools to combine, and you have a powerful setup afterwards. Not just for sending and receiving email, but also taking care of spammers and other people that would abuse your open relay or your spam or your mail server in detail.
Yep.
Good stuff.
So lastly, we have a tutorial on running a Tor relay on FreeBSD.
Yep, this has been a popular option. Yeah, that's also good.
So yeah, there are two main steps to getting a Tor relay working on FreeBSD. One is installing and configuring Tor, and then we have using an edge router to do the port translation. So in this case, they wanted the Tor to run its services on port 80 and 443, but any port under 1024 normally requires root access on a Unix system. So in this case, they used port mapping on their router to map the ports to different numbers. So on their external IP address, it would be port 80 and 443, but then they're translated with NAT before they get to the machine actually running Tor and use a number they can run as non-root. You can also use the MAC framework on FreeBSD with the port ACLs to actually allow a specific user to listen on that port rather than having to have a root.
Oh,
so
yes.
they install two things, Tor and ARM. ARM is the anonymizing relay monitor. It provides useful monitoring graphs that can be used to configure the Tor RC file. And they talking about making some changes to that Tor RC file to do what you want to do.
There are also a couple of screenshots at the bottom of that blog post. Looks very nice from the, it's just a simple graphical output from the shell or from the console, but it still gives you an idea of what's going on in your relay.
Yeah, they have a pf config file showing how they've configured pf for the Tor and doing the natting. And then, they have the screenshots of the Tor monitor thing, giving you an idea what it looks like. Or actually, sorry, that screenshot is showing how they configured on the router. And then they enable Tor, run it as the _Tor user. And then showing the traffic flowing through pftop with some data redacted.
Yeah, for security reasons, of course.
But you can see exactly what's happening.
Yeah, this is a nice setup. I keep hearing people talking about Tor and wanting to run it on FreeBSD, so this is exactly the tutorial people were looking for. BSD Bits time. This first item is OpenBSD as a desktop laptop. So people who want to run this, there's a nice description here in this blog post.
It says, my daughter has finally finished transitioning all of her files off onto her new laptop, and I have graciously inherited the old one. The laptop's a Lenovo Flex 3. It's one of those screens that folds all the way around and a touchscreen so that you can treat it like a tablet. It has a RJ45 jack powered by a Realtek 8168 chipset, Oh, I'm sorry. But that does mean it has gigabit Ethernet, which is nice. The built-in wireless is an unsupported chipset. So I'm not using the wireless network on it just yet. I'll probably pull the adapter and put in a Hack5 field kit instead.
Given that
so he says, the first thing he did was try to use the already installed Linux Mint that he had laying around so that I could boot the machine into a live system so I could take a disk image. I plugged in a 3 terabyte Weston Digital external drive, ran DD to dump the internal image, and then put the Weston Digital back on the shelf. Next, built a new USB stick of the OpenBSD 6.1 release media, and then had to go into the BIOS and UEFI settings and change the boot order so that the USB drive would boot first. And then he had to change the boot type to legacy, and the documentation says UEFI should have worked with OpenBSD, but it was not, so just disabled it in the BIOS and installed OpenBSD anyway. Once they got OpenBSD safely installed using the default whole disk in default partition scheme, they set up a package URL pointing and pulled down XFCE and all the dependencies, and some other stuff, ran startx, and they had a machine.
Oh, nice. That seems easy enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nice one. The next is from Sasha Wildner, because he has updated ACPI-CA in Dragonfly to Intel's version 2017, the 29th of June. And his message reads, he syncs HCPI-CA with Intel's version of that date. We skipped that May version of the 31st due to regression in the processing of resource descriptors. This is a known bug, and which is fixed in that current version of June. The support is added for ACPI 6.2, specification available at uefi.org. Fixes in ACPI table verification, signature validation, and mutexes, as long as numerous other fixes and additions. Oh, good. I guess other BSD projects will also sync to that version now that's available. Good stuff. Next up
over on the Dragonfly Digest, we have dports, rust, and updates. And they said, I've waited to post this because it's a bit complicated, but there's a summary. Dports didn't get updated with new binary builds for a while because Rust stopped working, which broke Firefox. Michael Newman got Rust working again, and packages are now updated. If you run into upgrade troubles, you should use the -F flag. And there's some details from a mailing list there.
Mm-hmm.
Good to see that Dragonfly's got their binary packages rolling again.
Yeah, that's important. I mean, people want to not just run the operating system, but also applications on it. Next up is Unix's mysterious && and
you skipped a story.
Oh, did we?
Sorry.
Right.
17.7 release candidate 1 is now out. They've got quite a list of changes here, including adding swap file options for SSDs, bring back their crash reporter, some LDAP SSL stuff, and a couple other things. Currently known issues. Wireless devices cannot be created. A patch exists to remedy the problem. So if you're using wireless, you might want to wait for the next release candidate. Lag devices. Destroying a lag device may cause a kernel panic. And the installer identifies itself as 17.1, even though it's 17.7.
Mm-hmm. Good.
It also says, as always with the pre-releases, only OpenSSL is available, but they'll add LibreSSL as they get closer to release. But yes, then we have this interesting story about the history between the and or operators in Shell.
Yeah, this is on Network World, and it basically starts with describing what those operators do. So and pipe operators, they provide some very useful functionality, but they can be a bit mysterious, especially considering the number of options for how they are used. And so the common use of these Boolean operators is in the construction of multi-conditional tests, of course, like in a shell script. When you want two or more conditions to be true with a test program, or any in a set of operators to be true before some other command is run. So the ampersand or and serves as a logical and, requiring all conditions to be true, while the pipe provides a logical or, so that requires only one condition to be true. And they combine some tests here to see how they look like. So in this first one, we have two parameters in shell script, and well, this could also be done in bin sh, by the way. And we compare them and see how the square brackets make the evaluation either fall through the evaluation and evaluate to true or false. And there's also a little further down the Boolean logic of commands, because then you can say like echo one command, pipe, echo another command, and then you can see what the output will look like depending on whether it's the ampersand operator or the pipe operator. You can also use the two operators to exit loops in your shell script. That might be something people might want to check out. And so there's a couple of examples.
This later one here where you're doing something, and then if that ever gives an error, you want to break out of the loop instead of continue looping.
Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to continue, so you have a good way of breaking out if something happens while the while loop is processing, or any other loop. So that's a good write-up, so people can brush up their knowledge of shell scripting and the operators. Next story is the Commute Deck, a homebrew Unix terminal for tight places. This is actually something people want to check out for a little bit more laptop alternatives. So it starts with...
looks like a small keyboard with a screen in the middle.
Yeah. So Kenny Sharfglass designed his Commute Deck as a laptop alternative for his morning commute. It combines a mechanical keyboard running the TMK Open Keyboard firmware, a 7-inch 720p display from Adafruit, a long-life USB battery, and a Raspberry Pi 2 with USB, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth dongles, and a little USB hub, all mounted on a laser-cut quarter-inch plywood chassis.
Yeah.
This is a self-made tablet it's actually more of a laptop because it has the keyboard as an external device.
The Commute Deck is designed to provide a productive computing experience for Unix terminal type work in tight spaces like on a train or the economy class seat on an airplane. So giving you something that basically looks and feels like a keyboard, but the keys shoved out to the edges and in the middle is a screen, and it takes up less space than a laptop, apparently.
Yeah, this is good. And it's kind of ingenious putting all these different components together and making something new out of it. So if you want to build your own...
mentions about it is that it's sealed, so it can be carried outside in uncontrolled weather conditions. The mechanical keyboard is comfortable to type on because of the width versus some laptop ones. And battery life is sufficient for cross-country flights or full days at a conference.
Oh, good. So people who want to buy this, or not buy this, but build this themselves, the sources are all on GitHub, and the link is on the blog post we link from the show notes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like this. This is small, but still you can do some work on it. Next up in our train of news, the little bits about BSD. So another bit is FreeBSD 11.1 RC3 is now available. So we're moving continuously ahead in the schedule.
A little birdie just told me the 11.1 release final builds have just started.
Ooh, exciting. Very good.
We're definitely on track to meet the release date. So
nice.
Start testing.
Very good.
It's almost already too late.
Yeah, so the release notes give a little bit away what the changes were since RC2. There's a rare truncation case that has been fixed in the runtime linker. Signatures of several pthread stubs have been corrected. Deprecation notices have been added to other utilities like GDB, KGDB, SI control, WL-config, and as well as several drivers that have been removed since, or from 12, basically.
Yep.
Loop termination.
Disappear in the future.
loop termination in WM underscore map underscore find underscore min has been fixed, and the layout of the VM map entry structure has been restored. And there's a special note there below for a known corner case regarding this.
They've also patched the Heimdall security advisory that came out the other day, and then fixed some issues with the Intel SD, HCI, and eMMC controllers. They can fail on the first attempt after a D3 to D0 transition. They've also merged the Capsicum support that was added into Beehive, so that is part of 11.1 now.
Mm-hmm. Very good. People have been looking forward to this. Okay, nice one. The next story is also a little bit heartwarming, I think, for people who are, who are in the same situation, because here's a story about installing Dragonfly BSD with Orca when you're totally blind.
Yeah,
so this is
I just thought I would post this here to see if there's any other users of Dragonfly BSD that are totally blind. If there is, we could probably connect and share experiences and tips. I use Orca, which is a screen reader for the GUI to access my laptop and desktop in Dragonfly. There are console screen readers available, however, I have not tried to get any of them working yet, mostly because Orca can read my GUI terminal, like Mate terminal or XFCE4 terminal, etc. I performed my installation using QEMU with the -curses option and a Linux Live CD that had Orca installed. The curses option forwards the QEMU output of the Dragonfly installer running in QEMU to the Mate terminal so that you can read it with Orca. I used the raw format with the target drive in QEMU so that I could boot onto the real hardware when done. The workflow is basically use QEMU with Orca on a live CD to install the system and configure it, and then set Orca to auto start so that when you reboot into the system, on the actual hardware, it'll comes up and starts talking. I actually had to do, back before, I had a machine that wouldn't boot off USB because of some reason. And so I actually had the existing OS, started up QEMU, and had it point at the real hard drive, and then overwrote the real hard drive with FreeBSD and then rebooted onto it. Yes, it's I know in particular there's a blind user of FreeBSD who I've met at MeetBSD 2 or 3 times. And it's one of the problems they have is that, they can get the screen reader stuff working on the system. And once it's there, they can use the system very well. But doing an install, that's not really an option. And so they always have to get assistance from someone else. And that's a bit of a problem for them.
Oh, yeah, right. Because in the default install, there's no screen reader installed already. So you have to,
right.
Yeah, okay. Some good news from the accessibility front. So Orca is something that helps people run their Unix.
Yeah. Next up, we have a picture. It's titled, Who Says That FreeBSD Can't Look Good? And it's a screenshot of somebody running a nice... They got a bunch of terminal windows up here, transparent on a fancy background, and it looks pretty...
Yeah, this looks nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. And last but not least in our weekly BSD Bits is Pratik Vyas adds the ability to do paused VM migrations for OpenBSD's VMM. This is from the Move Along, Nothing to See Here department on the OpenBSD journal, undeadly.org. And we see from the commit message that the new developer PD at OpenBSD adds the ability to do paused VM migrations for VMM. And Mike Larkin also writes that on Twitter. VMCTL send my VM, pipe SSH is user at somewhere, VMCTL receive. Yes, that's easy.
Yeah, and so it looks a lot like ZFS replication, but with OpenBSD VM. They do note that you have to pause the machine first. You can't do that while it's actually executing.
Yeah, it's not live, but it's still something you can do when the machine is paused. Nice one. That's good. Another good thing is doing backups. And where should you do backups? Of course, on Tarsnap, because that's the online backup source for the truly paranoid.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, this isn't just the backup service that I use. This is the backup service that my credit card processor uses. This is the backup service that my tax preparer uses. Both of those things not only make me feel better about Tarsnap, but more importantly, make me feel better about my credit card processor and my tax preparer that I know that they're actually using Tarsnap.
Oh, did you recommend that to them, or did they have
no,
that already?
Colin did, but actually, It was the other way. Colin recommended the credit card processor and the tax preparer to me.
Oh, because they were using it. Okay, I see. Well, this is something to worth check out. It's not just for the computer people among us. It's actually quite easy to use. There's a Tarsnap client for most operating systems, even for Windows, and people can store all their files securely in the cloud and can be sure that no one else except them can decipher those files.
Yep.
All right, now that we have knowledge about Tarsnap service, we should go right into our feedback and questions section. This week we start with OpenBSD MP networking. That's a question we have received. And it reads, "Hi guys, great show you have. Thank you for it. You're welcome. I'm an OpenBSD user and I'm working primarily as a router or firewall. As you already know, OpenBSD is working hard on multi-processing networking stuff, and one of the developers that is working on it is Martin Pichot, or MPI at openbsd.org. Beside MPNet stuff, he's working on USB and dtrace-like debugger for OpenBSD. And so there's a Twitter link and also a webpage link to the webpage. And here's a question. I would like to hear him talking about MP networking stuff like this. There's a couple of questions. This might be something for an interview, actually.
Yeah,
if I look at it.
This is basically a recommendation for an interview along with actually some good questions for the interview. Main reason we put this in the feedback here is to give people an example of what kind of email we really like to get, recommending a specific person to interview and giving us a list of questions to ask them. It helps us a lot. So yes, we are going to get in touch with Martin and see if we can't make that happen for you. But
people are interested in that, and
sometimes
why not?
It helps a lot to give people a template of what you're kind of looking for, and it helps them know what to send when they're writing into you.
Yeah, and I guess there's a lot of stuff to talk about in that space, or the problems they're dealing with currently. Yeah, nice suggestion. We'll try to hunt him down, and maybe we'll have him in a future show. Next up is Goran about debuggers. So he writes, "Hello, fellow daemons. Since EuroBSD in Belgrade, I successfully switched all my boxes to FreeBSD." Hey, nice. That's a good outcome of a conference.
Good job.
Until now, I learned a lot, and mostly thanks to you guys. Although local support for EuroBSD was almost non-existent, I'm doing my best in expanding the FreeBSD community in our hackerspace, and the progress is slow but persistent, which is the real reason I'm writing to you. Few of us decided to take the dark road of kernel development and debugging. For development, there are tons of articles, books, and how-tos, but not so for debugging. Also, as GDB, the GNU debugger, is not part of base anymore, we don't know what it means for KGDB and LLDB. As you briefly mentioned debuggers on the show, would you be kind to tell us what is the proper or modern way of debugging FreeBSD kernel, and point out any documentation on how to get one non-kernel developer learn kernel debugging in the most efficient way? Thank you very much.
So GDB got deleted, but then actually got re-added. It's just hidden by default under user libexec because it's needed by crash info and a few things. But the main idea is that, GDB and KGDB, you want the versions from ports now. Sadly, they're based on GPLv3 code, so it's not included by default, but they provide much more useful output and are much more modern. LLDB works for userland, although for kernel it's not quite there yet. But work is ongoing and that will keep getting better. But your best bet is probably getting GDB and KGDB from ports and using those. It also depends what version you're running on. The tools are still there in 11, but in 12 they will be. And we're kind of in the middle of the transition, so it can be a little weird.
Bumpy, yeah. And we also need to brush up our documentation on how to do kernel debugging. I know someone who has a couple of new things for the handbook or the developer's handbook. but it just needs to be put into the right structure and formatted a little bit and put into the actual document to be of use for people.
Yeah, kernel debugging can be complicated. It's kind of over my head. I can kind of figure out where something might be going wrong to look at the code, but, when you get deeper than that and you're looking at what's actually happening in the processor, it's like, yeah, that's over my head. Dtrace is usually a much easier way to determine what's going on, as far as examining a variable while it's there, although dtrace requires the probes to be there already, and so if you're wanting something that isn't, then yeah, KGDB sometimes is the only way. I would love to help, but I'm in need of the same documentation you are.
Yeah, so even more needed now than... but I think there's documentation out there, bits and pieces. We just have to put it together and make it useful and for people to get it. All right. Yeah, thanks for the feedback, and hopefully we see you at a future EuroBSDCon. Paris, maybe? Okay. Next up is Abhinav about man-k. Hi guys, he writes, I'm a big fan of BSD Now, really enjoy watching it every week. Well, we enjoyed producing it every week. I am a recent NetBSD developer myself, and watching the show motivates me to do good work. I'm sure it helps and motivates many other users and developers too. Yeah, we hope so.
I was really surprised with the number of developers that watch. I was like, all right.
Don't they know this stuff already? It's like, but it's a good way of keeping up with the stuff that's going on.
Yes, with what's going on. That's what a lot of them said. They couldn't possibly read all the mail, but we pick out the good ones.
Yeah, that's the filter already. Okay, he continues. In NetBSD, I implemented the new apropos utility, which, unlike conventional apropos implementation, does full-text search of man pages, like proper search engines. So you can do queries like install packages, compare strings, create new process, and still see relevant results. Based on it, I have created a web interface of it called http
man-k.org. Man-k is how you do an apropos search. So man-k.org seems really useful.
He also created indexed man pages of all the major BSDs, as well as Linux, kernel, glibc, and core utils, and the POSIX man pages, which are regularly kept updated. Apart from that, there is a what-is-like functionality as well, which can search across multiple platforms. It can be useful when you want to see which operating systems support a particular function, or which operating systems ship with a given driver. And it's also available at man-k.org/whatis. It would be great if you guys covered it in your show. Oh yes, of course we do this. This is nice for everyone.
In particular, often what you find is you know what it is you want to do, and you know there's a tool for it, you just can't remember the name of it. So if you go to man-k.org and you can type in a brief description of what you're trying to do, it will help you find the right tool. The other approach, one of the things I like about the FreeBSD man pages is the cross-referencing. Oftentimes it's like, well, I know it's related to this other tool, so I look at that tool and find the list of tools that are related with the cross-references. But yes, man-k.org looks to be super useful. So thank you very much for sending that in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is something for the tool belt of every BSD developer or any Unix developer for that matter. Cool. And last for this week is Liam with University Setup. He writes, Hi, Benedict and Alan. First off, keep up the good work. I often listen to your podcasts while driving from work. While I have only been listening to them for around 2 months now, I have already gained some knowledge about BSD and ZFS, as well as other things, how they might work. Now, on to his questions. I am returning to university in October to continue his computer science degree, or your degree, and I will be studying object-oriented Java first. But the problem is that the university uses its own modified BlueJ IDE for Java, which only comes packages for Unix, just such as deb or DMG for Mac. As a student who wants to move his laptop to BSD and does not want to run VMs locally, I see a small server may be the best solution. For example, FreeNAS that acts as both as a storage server for backups and virtual machines, with the ability to log in graphically to the virtual machines using some sort of VNC client. The setup would only have 2 drives set up in RAID 1 via ZFS, but my most important files would be backed up to a service like Tarsnap. While my description is very bare bones, I'm still planning on a setup like this and was wondering if both of you could add your suggestions towards the plan, maybe something completely different. And additionally, for the laptop, which is a Lenovo X220, Would you choose FreeBSD or TrueOS for a student? I like what TrueOS is doing, but I imagine they have a lot more breakage than FreeBSD does.
So I have two X220s here, one with vanilla FreeBSD and one with TrueOS. I admit at one point I had to look at the TrueOS one and steal one of the configurations to make it work the way around it on vanilla FreeBSD. If you track the new TrueOS stable branch, it's a lot less breaky than it used to be. So it's probably fine to just use TrueOS. But yes, with the X220, it's got all the drivers already in FreeBSD. So, my one laptop downstairs that's FreeBSD 11.0 and just runs stock everything. Suspend and resume works, the wireless works, everything is great. But yes, I have a second one with TrueOS and it works great too. As far as the BlueJ IDE, if it's Java, it probably would just work.
In any other IDE, by the way. So usually the universities provide you with a standard IDE that they know and use in their labs, like we did, or do still.
It often is easier to stick with what they have. What you might be able to do with the .deb, if it's all actually Java, not any native code, you likely could extract the deb because it's probably just a tar file renamed or whatever, and be able to run it. But yes, your other approach there with the FreeNAS, if you're running a FreeNAS 11, it has Beehive now with the graphical VNC stuff, so you can actually configure it such that you can have VMs that you can VNC into running on your FreeNAS, and just mirror your two drives together and back it up.
Oh, by the way, we have BlueJ and FreeBSD ports, courtesy of Lars Engels. There's BlueJ. Yeah, I just checked fresh ports. There's BlueJ in the Java category. Last commit was last year in May, but, it's an IDE. You always need the latest version, I guess.
Yeah, who knows if there is a later version. So if you just do package install BlueJ, you should get the IDE and it should just work. Just because they don't make a package for it doesn't mean that we don't have one.
Yeah, there's a need for people all around the globe for specific software. So one person sits down and just does it and everyone else is happy about it. Regarding the whole virtual machine stuff and the VNC connection. So VNC is nice, but RDP is better. So I try XRDP. So it's also in ports that runs your...
right, it depends what you're doing. Like, if you need access to the BIOS console, basically, of the Beehive, connecting the VNC to the Beehive gives you that. But once you get the OS up and running, if you're going to run Windows or whatever, then yes, using the native remote desktop client, remote desktop server in Windows and connecting to it with the client from FreeBSD or whatever is going to perform nicer because it's specifically accelerated for the way Windows does it. Whereas VNC is basically scraping pictures of the screen and streaming it to you. If you're using remote desktop on Windows, for most of the stuff, what it's actually doing is just getting the instructions on how to draw the window and drawing it on your machine, which is more bandwidth efficient.
Yeah, very much so. And for the setup, 2 drives work in RAID 1 with ZFS. That's a good way to start.
Yep.
No problems there.
Exactly. So, yes, that's a perfectly reasonable approach, but it looks like you might be able to get that BlueJ by just package install BlueJ, and it will have a FreeBSD native version that will just work on your FreeBSD machine, and it'll be exactly like you would get from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and good luck with your studies, and if you have further questions, don't hesitate to contact us, or other people can do the same. Send us questions at feedback@bsdnow.tv.
Yep. So if you have your own questions like we just answered, make sure you send those in, feedback@bsdnow.tv. If you have interview recommendations, especially if they include what questions you would like us to ask, do send those in as well. And don't forget, we're also lining up to do an episode where we answer interview questions. So if you have questions for either of us about various things, We don't know what you want to ask. That's why we're asking you to tell us what you want to know. Write those in to feedback@bsdnow.tv as well. And make sure you set the subject for those ones to, what did we ask them to set it to?
Last time, it's in the show notes from last week, so you'll find it there. Well, we'll sort it out. It's easy to get.
Loading. Scrolling. Loading. Come on.
The internet is stuck.
15 pages of show notes yesterday? How did we do that?
Yeah.
Right. The subject is viewer interview questions.
Yeah, those are the ones for us. And if you have tech questions, then just use the regular subject line.
Just regular feedback at BSDnow.tv if you have questions about BSD you want answered, sure. But separately, we would love questions for us so we can conduct our little interviews of ourselves to make sure that you guys get your questions answered.
Yep. Thanks for watching and see you next week.